A lot of people have different names for it, different labels, and obviously traders use this because if they can borrow against the assets, they can get more leverage, right? If you have $5 million, you borrow $1 million, you can use that to just buy more stock. And obviously, if the stocks go up, you make more money than you would otherwise.
Let's talk about the biggest secret to how to beat the banks at their own game with crypto. So, Ivan, what is the number one secret to beating the banks at their own game with crypto?
So the first kind of thing you have to understand about banks is they try to make a spread, right? So their core business is essentially borrowing at a low rate and then lending it at a high rate, right? And they like to do this so that they take the money in and then give it out as soon as possible, so that all the money is put to work. So one of those businesses is one that's some of the listeners might be familiar with, some of the listeners might even be benefiting from it. It's called stock margin lending. And it's basically the same thing as home loans or auto loans, except the asset that's backing it is stock, right? And I'm saying that it's their own game because unlike a house or auto loan where you can shop around, if you're a customer of their brokerage account and let's say you're a high net worth individual, you have $5 million of stocks and bonds. A lot of them have appreciated for a long time. So you have a huge amount of unrealized capital gains, right? And so you don't want to sell them because if you do, then you hit a tax, there's a huge tax hit unless they use some of these tax deferral strategies that you are quite familiar with on your podcast. But in practice, they also have, like a trading account that typically is maybe tax deferred, maybe it's just regular taxable account. And so, well, I want to, fund some renovations for the house, right? Now, the nice thing is that they can then just say, well, look, you have an asset. Why don't we just unlock some equity by borrowing against it? So that's essentially what stock margin lending is. Now, a lot of people have different names for it, different labels, and obviously traders use this because if they can borrow against the assets, they can get more leverage, right? If you have $5 million, you borrow $1 million, you can use that to just buy more stock. And obviously, if the stocks go up, you make more money than you would otherwise. The other version of this is for consumption, right? So you want to buy new TV or renovations. And similarly, you'd rather just borrow against it to get the benefits of the cash. And at some point, you get dividends or something like that, and it almost just pays for itself. So this is the bank's own game because you are a captive audience. You cannot borrow from another bank. Your brokerage sits with them, which means that they get to charge essentially what rate they want. Now, obviously, there's some amount of competition because they could move all their assets from one brokerage to another brokerage to the bank. But some people are lazy, and in practice, regardless of your net worth, that's the same consideration. They're going to fill out the paperwork in another bank. I like my relationship manager at this bank, so on and so forth. And so you essentially don't get the best rate, and they essentially get to keep that interest for themselves. So that is the game that banks play.
Okay, make sure I got that here because I think it's making some sense. So the game they make is they make a spread on the capital that's already invested with them, and they let you borrow against it, right? And part of that's because if you don't borrow against it, you're going to get hit with capital gains tax, right? So they kind of have, in one sense, people are feeling trapped with that, and then if you're already in the account, right, they kind of have you as a captive audience, meaning they can kind of charge you maybe higher than normal if it was a lot of competition. Is that a fair summary, Ivan?
That's right. And a lot of people that are in this situation, they're not professional traders, right? So if they've done well in whatever the business is, they've accumulated wealth, and they're like, hey, look, I'm just doing some passive investments, right? And so they want something that can, hey, look, we're going to smooth out some of my expenses. I have a chunky purchase coming up. I can use this account to do that. So they're not really super careful about what they're looking at in terms of the interest rates. They're not like a hedge fund that's like, haggling for 5 basis points across investment banks. They're just like regular folks, small business owners and things like that. And then they give you the opportunity to do this thing, which is a convenience for you and a benefit to them.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's a good game that they're playing there.